Good. So first of all, thank you so much for your time. This is really exciting. I'm very curious to hear your perspective on a lot of this. So first, before we dive into LFS, wanted to take a quick minute to just talk about local sourcing and see if there's any way that we can expand on it and explain to those who might not be familiar with it. So can you help us get a better understanding of what local sourcing is and what the process can look like from your perspective?
So it's funny that you say that because I'll always go back to crediting Rachel in the Common Market
Yeah,
for educating me on what local sourcing is. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention her in the beginning because she's the reason I know whatever it is that I can say today about
that's
local sourcing.
amazing.
Yep.
She'd be
And
very happy to hear that.
well, she should be because she worked hard on me. She really did. She worked hard on me. I think most times in life, people see things in us that we don't see in ourselves. And
Mm,
she was see, the fact that I was sitting in the middle of a hotbed of local produce and being able to utilize that produce in the Bridgeton school system was really how this relationship started and how I got here today, really. So when you talk about local sourcing, it's really in every city or situation that you're in, being able to look around at the resources that you have
mm,
your area and being able to find a way to utilize those products to strengthen those supply chains and also strengthen your menu and availability that you're bringing to your customer base. Um,
yeah,
I think I think local sourcing is a little bit tricky for some people because they don't understand the regulations and the logistics and it just basically, how local is defined and it's defined different by, a lot of
yeah,
different people. In Bridgeton,
yeah,
we said 400 miles. For LFS, local is in state,
yeah,
so there's a lot of different ways that it's done, but I think the best thing for people to look at when they look at local sourcing is what does it mean to you and how does it fit your situation?
yeah, yeah. I appreciate that. And you're right, it can differ so greatly between so many different places. As you were talking, I kind of came up with another question. I'm curious, what was your mentality like before Rachel came and talked to you? And what was it like to have that transition?
It's funny. I'll go back to again my education with Common Market highly called me a conscientious objector. I was I really
Stubborn?
yeah, I was stubborn. Yep. Um, my big thing with local was I could appreciate because I grew up working in the fields, in and
Mm,
around Bridgeton. I could appreciate all the farming and the organic and local supply chains because I grew up in it and
yeah.
my family members grew up in it, and I had a lot of family and friends, who were still in that business. But as school food service directors, we are taught to look at the bottom line and save money or
Mm,
else you'll go out of business. You look to treat it like a business. So I objected and I was stubborn because instead of me looking at the quality of the
mm,
product
yeah.
and the meaningfulness of purchasing local, I looked at pricing and
Yeah.
didn't realize that, when you look past all that, the pricing kind of takes care of itself. And,
Hmm.
trying to understand how you engineer your menu during the week and during the month. Um, just being, business savvy with trying to space things out during the week and having it even out, the pricing really did take care of itself. And we actually made
Interesting.
money in Bridgeton, buying a higher cost item. So,
Interesting.
and my perspective on it now is, I wish everyone, could kind of, look at local sourcing and farm to school
Hmm.
and just open your mind up to it and not be so closed off on it, looking at it at a dollar and cents, point of view. It's really about, you know, being able to help local family farmers out and expanding your program with quality produce and proteins through being creative and crafty with what you do.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get into a lot of that. I have a lot of questions around that, but um, I'm hoping that we can expand a little bit on what you mean by that the budget took care of itself when you started to source higher priced objects. So That's really exciting. But for now, I wanted to ask, what would be your key piece of advice for food service directors that are looking to start sourcing locally and have never done it before? You kind of touched on that just a little bit with your own experience of having to make that transition and that shift. But for those who might not have the same perspective and the value of growing your own food that you had, what would that look like for them, or what would you tell them?
So the first piece of advice I would have is you number one, you want to be compliant in your program. So you really need to check the
Mm,
regulations in your state and see what those thresholds are. And then in your district, because every district has, different policies and regulations that they follow. So
right.
once you find out what that is, you need to assess your food service department's capabilities. Um, you may not have the equipment or the skill set, in your employees to be able to, bring in raw product and use, or bring in fresh produce that has come out of the field and hasn't been broken down or fabricated. So you need to assess the program and see where you're at with the skill set and equipment to see if you can do any of
Hmm.
that. Then you want to look at menu goals. What is it that you want to do on your menu? Where do you want to take your whole program, and whether or not, the students are going to accept those items onto your menu, and how you present it to them.
Hmm.
That's the big key. We can throw filet mignon on the menu if it's local, but if they don't
Yeah,
understand how to eat it, then they're not going to eat it.
right.
Um, and then you got to look at sourcing. And again, I'll go back to you need to find a local food hub, like the Common Market, and see what their availability list has to
Mm,
offer, see how it fits on your menu, and be able to bring that into your school district and make it work. And I know it sounds like a lot, it is a little bit of a puzzle, but one of the things I want to talk about later is how you get through that puzzle, how you
yeah.
talk. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say you actually make it sound very easy, breaking it down into like, okay, first you do this, then you do this. But within that, there's a whole bunch of pieces that I understand need to come together. And one of the questions that I did want to ask at the moment as a quick follow-up there is, where can people go to understand what those regulations are for their particular district and what, program availability they have if they don't already know that? In case, from my experience talking with food service directors, they can be overwhelmed and overworked. So, what resources would be available to support that?
So for the regulations, for the state, I would always start with your state agency, in New
Mhm.
Jersey, New Jersey Department of Agriculture. They've been more than helpful with giving out technical assistance
Yeah.
and being able to talk you through what you can and what you can't do. Again, I was blessed in Bridgeton to have a strong business administrator and a strong
Mhm.
office that really kept us abreast on procurement policies and what we could and what we couldn't do. So I would start there and really familiarize yourself with, what you can and what you can't do. And again, the common market has resources to be able to help along with that. We have
Mhm.
a boiler point, a boilerplate template that we can use for local bids that was
Mhm.
produced by Rachel. So
Yep.
that document, it was investigated and saw that there was a big need for a document like that to be able to help school districts out. So that
Yeah.
is available to school districts to use for the procurement needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one last follow-up to that question there. So you mentioned having a strong business administrator is obviously a boon and useful and successful. What if the team that you're working with or the school isn't necessarily on board with local sourcing and you want to try to get them to that point? Do you have any advice for food service directors who are excited but feel they're coming up against that barrier?
Yep. You need to find one champion, that's going to be, on your side, that is in
Hmm.
administration, a principal, assistant superintendent, a superintendent, someone that understands, how important local sourcing is to the school district, and really lay out a plan to them and show them how passionate you are about changing the culture in your district.
Yeah.
And it's amazing when you get one stakeholder, one champion on board, then it's a snowball effect. It really starts to come into play and people can see, that this is going to affect, children's lives, not just now, but into the future because we're trying to build healthy eating habits for the students.
Yeah.
And by doing it, when they're young and in their impressionable years, that's when we take those habits take hold.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much value, and it's such an incredible investment to make in everyone's future.
Hmm.
Um, and in that sense, as you are talking about getting champions and finding at least one person on your team who would be willing to support this, there are certain elements or aspects of purchasing local that can sometimes prove challenging. So, for example, local purchasing can often involve understanding seasonality, which, in my experience, conversing with food service directors, that's always a question that comes up of, how do I navigate understanding what I can and can't purchase throughout the year when they're so used to purchasing what they need, on a year-long basis. So, how can food service directors navigate that challenge of working with seasonal products if they've never purchased seasonal products before?
That was a big barrier for me because, again, in our training to be a food service director, you're taught, you're going to build a cycle menu, and in that cycle menu, it's got to be the same because you're going to cost it. So you
Yeah,
don't want to change anything, based on availability.
right.
The biggest thing I'll say is, be in business, it doesn't matter what business you're in. If you can't be nimble, if you can't be flexible and be able to,
Mm,
move around and understand that things change, then you're not going to be successful.
that's
So my
true.
my advice would be just be nimble, and
Yeah,
your cycle menus and understand that that cycle menu is just a guide.
yeah,
And then there's
yeah.
the ignorance that I had of, okay, watermelons in season in the summertime. Yeah, I can use it for summer feeding, but it's not going to do me any good, in September, October when school's back in session. But just
Mhm.
understanding that there's charts, there's resources that you can look at to
Yeah.
plan that out and understand what is available during the school year, and then
Hmm.
supplementing it with some of the other stuff that isn't as tasty or as popular as watermelon. You
Right,
find
right.
find a way to make it work for you on the menu.
Yeah, I love that you highlight that it takes a mentality or a perspective shift that you don't have to be so wedded to one particular structure how you work through this. You have to, open up a little bit and see that there's different options and a level of creativity that you can employ to introduce seasonal items. And often what we do here is we'll encourage food service directors just to choose one item on their menu to supplement if it's like a hand fruit or something easy like, that they use regularly, like carrots or frozen items. That can be a really easy way to slot that in so that you're still adjusting the menus, but you're not completely breaking everything down and having to reorient what was a very structured, regimented, cycled system.
That,
Um,
that's how
yeah,
I'm sorry. That's how we started in Bridgeton. It was
yeah,
okay. Let's do apples. I was getting apples
yep,
from our broadline vendor. I said, you know what? They got a bunch of apples on their availability list. It was alphabetically. It was apples were there. You know what? Let's buy some
yep,
apples. We
yeah,
started with apples and saw the relationship just grow and build from there. So
yeah,
just
yeah.
one of them. Yep.
One item. And the other thing I'll highlight too that the common market also provides is we have seasonality charts that we can walk people through to better understand what is available throughout the year. And our availability list for New Jersey also has a sidebar that helps folks see, what you can purchase and when. So we try to be as transparent about that. And most other food hubs, I think, will also have resources in the same vein that help food service directors understand what they can purchase.
That that
So,
that seasonality chart was very helpful in Bridgeton because
yeah,
again, earlier, not knowing and understanding, and then being able to see how you'll be able to spend that dollar throughout the year, and you can keep that relationship going. It's snowing outside right now, but there's still fresh produce coming into the warehouse.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah,
but
yeah, and that's another interesting misconception, at least that I've come against as well, that it's winter, there's nothing available, but there's plenty of stuff.
yeah,
Carrots, root vegetables, we still have apples, pears, plenty
mhm,
of amazing products that we can slot into menus.
yeah,
So, thank you for going through just that preliminary
Yeah.
exercise on local sourcing, how you got to this point, how you're able to shift your perspective on that. Let's talk a little bit about LFS. So we've already talked about, or I, mentioned at the beginning here what LFS is from a more top-down level, but how would you describe the opportunity from your perspective?
So to me, LFS was a very appreciated, meaningful resource that was
Mm,
provided to us from the USDA.
yeah.
And again, by the time LFS, money came out, I understood about purchasing local and trying to strengthen the supply chain. And, of course, it came around the time of COVID, but, just another resource that really, helped bolster, our menu. So I looked at that dollar and said, wow, how can we continue to supplement what it is that we're doing, in our district while bringing in local food, to the students and, make it be a win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest impacts it had on me was when I got a chance to talk to some of the farmers that we worked with
Mm,
and how
yeah.
appreciative they were to be able to receive those purchase orders that kept them going, through COVID. And, after COVID was over, they extended some of those dollars and
Hmm.
now it keeps them, even, further in business and moving along. And it gives their programs notoriety and they can say,
Yeah.
hey, I've been providing Bridgeton Public Schools with, chicken or pork or, fresh kale or, hydroponic greens, and I've sold X amount of pounds to them. Well, now there's that credibility behind them that they can produce and deliver and
Yeah.
fulfill those stores. So LFS has just been a wonderful program, not just for the school districts, but for the farmers as well, because it
Yeah.
keeps business and keeps them going along.
Yeah, I appreciate you highlighting that because obviously our main focus right here is public schools and, food service directors and ensuring better food access and healthier ingredients for students. But also there's the other side of this as well, that farmers are the root of this. They're the ones who allow us to be able to do this work. And this program is meant to duly compensate them and to build a strong regional food system for it. So I appreciate that you're able to see the value of that through that program. That's really exciting. So with that, in my experience as an outreach specialist with the common market, there seems to be a certain belief among food service directors that utilizing LFS dollars could be challenging in a number of ways from an administrative sense. So, for example, I've I've spoken with some food service directors who have expressed that they might feel like they're getting all that they need from existing sources like DoD or other purchases, or that those LFS dollars, they're concerned that it could potentially impact their commodity budgets. So that often results in more of a perspective of there's no need to participate in this additional resource, or there's a disinterest in using it, that it feels like a waste of time. From your
Mhm.
perspective, why should schools take advantage of this opportunity? And I'll have a quick follow up to that as well.
It's funny. When it first came out, my business administrator called me and she said, "Did you hear about this LFS money?" And I said, "Yeah." She says, "Do you want to opt in? Do you want to, take the funds?" I said, "But most certainly I do." She says, "Well, what are you going to do with it?" I says, "I'm going to, bolster our farm to school program." And she's like, "Well, how are you going to do that?" And I said, we'll work it out. We'll find proteins and more produce to buy, with the dollars because it was a considerable, amount of money.
Yeah.
So I look at it, as this is money that we can use to strengthen our program.
Hmm.
Um, the oversight of it is really what kind of you know makes people feel like it's a hard program to run. And I'll be honest, once you sit down and look at it, it's not as daunting of a task as
Yeah.
you think it is. So without making it sound like it's too easy, like I did with that other that other question, really in Bridgeton, what we did is we sat down and we said, how can we streamline this and make it easy? So
Hmm.
put one person in charge. Well, before we decided to do anything, we decided that this is how we're going to spend our money. So it
Hmm.
was easiest to make it simple. We spent all of our money with the common market. So that meant that whatever invoices that came in from the common market, we knew that they were all going to be New Jersey product,
Hmm.
local, and it would qualify for the LFS dollars. So every invoice that came in, we had a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet, and those invoices went on there. And once we put it on there, it just calculated how much the invoice was and deducted from the amount of money that we received from LFS dollars. So
It's
it
amazing.
became a very simple process of,
Yeah.
when it came in, record it, it was deducted. We had a running tab for how much, of the balance we had left to spend with the common market or in LFS dollars.
Yeah.
And when we do our quarter reporting, we just sent that sheet to the Department of Ag, and we never had any issues. So again, it makes it sound
Amazing.
it makes it sound really easy to do, but it is kind of easy if you're not, if you decide that this is what we're going to spend, this is how we're going to spend it, to the
Yeah.
common, keep it simple. We didn't bounce around and say, hey, we have vendor C that we're going to use for this or vendor
Hmm.
D to use for that. We picked
Yeah.
one vendor to use to make it easy and simple. And at times, I can see where people could use too, using that system that we had. But the key is really to just keep it simple. Don't make it too
Yeah.
complicated yourself and go from there.
I think that's a really valid and strong point, keeping it simple, because I feel like it's very easy to get overwhelmed by reporting procedures and to look at that and say, nope, I have 20 other things that I need to take care of. I'm not going to do this. But it sounds like it's worth taking the time to sit down and come up with a system and a structure to make your life a little easier so that you don't have to rewrite the wheel every time. And also
Mhm.
just to streamline a little bit and make sure that you're sourcing from at least one or two locations instead of 20. It reduces the headache.
And adversely, like I would hear some food service directors say, well, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm just going to buy milk. The milk that we buy
Mm,
is local from New Jersey. But my retort to that was always, how are you adding any benefit to your program
right,
by doing milk? There's nothing creative that you can do with milk that's going to bring them into your program, into your cafeteria, and have them say, wow, I had a great experience today.
right.
So
Yeah,
you're using the money by, buying milk, but you're not adding anything to your program. And
right, right.
I don't, I'm glad food service directors used it, but
Sure.
it was just my thought process that if we're going to use this money, if it's going to be here, I'm going
Hmm.
to build the program,
Yeah,
and see how we can make it work for us to have, likability, in in the
yeah,
community, who's, work for us.
yeah. I mean, ultimately, it is for the students. The whole point of being able to source locally and for the farmers as well. But the ultimate gain here is for the students to have exposure to that, to have access to healthier options, to be able to enjoy a better lunch experience. I'm curious, what would you say to food service directors who don't have a lot of money, who were awarded a much smaller amount, who then might feel like it may be more of a burden to go through that um, the process of trying to build out a program if they don't already have one?
I would say if you only got a little bit of money, to use in LFS, and don't be upset about it, use that money to do something grandiose with. So
Sure.
if I was only given a little bit of money, I would find a product to use, within those, parameters of what you have to spend, and really make a big deal out of whatever
Mm,
you do to bring it. If it's, hey, I got, uh, chorizo tacos that I'm putting on the menu, make a big day out of it. Do some
yeah,
marketing, do something to draw some attention to it. I got
yeah,
$11, to use and I brought this chorizo sausage that's local. It comes from this farmer. Do a farmer profile like, the common market, has for
yeah.
you, and really make a big deal out of it. Because what happens is when you use that money, when you use all your money, the
Hmm.
Department of Ag sees that, and you're more likely to get increased funding the next
Right,
round,
right.
or more money because you've depleted your money
Yeah,
and somebody else hasn't used their money. So
right.
when you're done, they'll give you more. So
So use
if
it,
you
yeah.
yeah, use it. So if you make a big deal out of it, the best bang for your buck, then people are going to see, wow, they did something special. They're drawing attention to their program, and
Hmm.
looking at it, down the road, somebody in Trenton's going to see it and say, you know what? They used all their money. Let's give them money because they're not
Right.
looking to sweep the banks. They're looking to
Yeah.
give money who've used all of their money.
Yeah. That's a really, really good point to make. And I feel like it also helps to make a big deal or to have a larger event to also gain buy-in from your community and from the school if that's something that maybe you've been struggling with as a food service director, making a big deal of an event over a couple of ingredients you were able to source and seeing the impact that it would have on the students and the community could really help to bolster maintaining that program moving forward.
Mhm.
Um,
And back to
the
your, I'm sorry, and back to your other question. Now, if you have some resistance, now you have more stakeholders, more champions
exactly.
see
Yes.
what you've done, in your
Yeah.
program. Yep.
Yeah, and the marketing material to back it up as well. And that's also something the common market can provide too. We have reporting data to help folks understand, the number of pounds of local food that they purchased, how many dollars went back to supporting the local farmers, how many farms they did support. We can help to make a big deal out of an event for sure.
Yes, you
So
can.
as a as a quick follow-up to that question, um, what in terms of, looking at your LFS spend and, understanding why you should take advantage of that opportunity. If a food service director is saying, this doesn't seem worth it to me, this doesn't feel like a good use of my time, what, or perhaps there's other folks on their team that are perpetuating that narrative. So, what questions could food service directors be asking themselves or their team to challenge that assumption that it isn't worth their time? Um, are there any specific approaches that you would recommend taking to address that challenge?
So eh, I kind of look at it like this. We all shop at home and we all get coupons, in the mail or digital or whatever it is. So
Mm,
that's free money. So you
yeah,
look at that, it is, it really is free money. So you look at that quarterly reporting that we have to do for, our state agency as proof of purchase. So sometimes when you have to redeem, your coupons or get a rebate or something,
hmm,
that input that we give back to the state agency, that's your proof of purchase. So if you just look
yeah,
at it, that's how simple it is, for you to get this free money, however much that it is. It's just a
hmm,
different way of, again, a shift in mindset of saying,
yeah, yeah,
this invoicing. It's a coupon. It's free money. You're gonna get a rebate. It's gonna come
yeah,
right back. Just take the money and find a simple way to make it easy to report it and give back to it. What I
yeah,
would say is food service directors should look at is how can I enhance my menu? If we're in
hmm,
the business of making decisions that are, student based, student oriented, then we have to make those decisions to say, I'm going to put my best foot forward every single day for our students. And
yeah,
I need to enhance my menu. And if someone's going to give me more money to enhance the menu, then I'm going to take it because let's face it, no one's going to give us money for labor. In
yeah,
New Jersey, minimum wage has raised, so no one's going to help you with that cost.
right,
Food cost is something that LFS dollars can help with. So you need to find a way to have that LFS money help you with your food costs.
yeah,
Um, and the approach I would say we kind of talked about a little bit before.
yeah,
Um, I would approach it slowly. You know, sit down with your team. If you have a small team, reflect on it. Make some pros and cons. How are you going to spend that money? How are you going to attack that? And go
yeah,
slow. Whether it's one apple, that you decide, hey, I'm going to put an apple, on the menu and use this LFS money, and I'm going to do it every other week or every month. Whatever it is that your situation and your money works it out to be, then that's what you do. If you
hmm,
assess that your team can do more and you can do, fresh produce and some proteins, find a way to do some training for your staff to be able to understand how to handle raw meat, how to cook it, how to take care of it, how to serve it, how to make it taste good. once you got all that professional development done, say, okay, I'm going to put this on my menu once a semester or,
Hmm.
once a month, and then
Yeah.
eventually grow to, 2 times a month or, in
Yeah.
Bridgeton, we had a scratch made items 2 to 3 times a week, but we did a lot of training. We
Mm.
were blessed to have cooks and staff members who really took on, the local foods in the raw product and said, we want to give this to our kids because they deserve it. So we had a lot of buy-in from, the staff members. But
Yeah.
every situation isn't going to be the same. And what I would say is just take baby steps, you
Yeah.
know, walk, real slow or crawl before you walk, however it is that you want to look.
Exactly.
We hit the ground running because we were strong enough to be able to do so. But there was a
Right.
lot of planning, that went into it. And there's a lot of oversight and a lot of management while you're doing it to make sure that you're doing it correctly.
Yeah.
So again, my approach to food service director would be just go slow.
Yeah.
Everybody's situation, you can't look, at somebody else's situation and say, well, I could never do that. You could do it. You just didn't see all the pain that I had behind it to
Right. You make it look
correct.
easy.
It looked easy, but there was a lot of pain that went into it, but
Yeah.
it's well worth it. It truly is a labor of love.
Yeah. And I really appreciate you highlighting to go slow because I feel like often there's such urgency or this need to move at lightning speed and to just figure something out and to, throw things at the wall and see what sticks. But giving folks the permission to just slow down, absorb this, figure out what works best for their operations, I think is definitely one of the most supportive mechanisms they could employ. And also, I appreciate that you said free money. I, I
Pretty
was
much.
wasn't sure if I was going to bring that up, but this is essentially free money from the state. You might as well hold on to it and then use it.
Yep, use it. It's use it or lose it. They'll sweep the
Yeah,
bank.
basically. Yeah,
Somebody else to use it.
awesome. So, similar to what we were just talking about, you mentioned building out this really beautiful school food program using this funding. How can leveraging those LFS dollars impact the participation in other school food programs, if at all? So, did building out your local food program help to support any of the other programs that you were working with?
Okay, that's a great question because in school food service, there's that perception that it's mystery meat, that it's,
Mm,
food that, isn't edible. So when you look at, the just general perception, there's jokes on TV all the time about, oh, cafeteria food is horrible. When
yeah.
you start using, high quality products, proteins and, fresh produce, when you start doing that and the kids notice it when you're marketing it and when you're,
Mm,
raising that level of excellence in your program, kids are going to want to start to look to your program to be fed. So now instead of, hey, lunch was good, let me see what they have for breakfast. You know,
hmm.
oh,
Yeah.
well, I heard they have a fresh fruit and vegetable program. I'm going to try that.
Hmm.
Now, what I would say to our staff members, especially the servers, were you guys were our first line of defense. Those kids saw you every day. So
Mm,
your
yeah.
program build that likability with your frontline servers, your cashiers. Now kids start to want to come back.
Yeah.
Wow, hey, that chicken was good. Can you tell the cook? They might never met her before, but can you tell them it was good? And other kids hear that, and it kind of becomes infectious. So when you
Right.
take just baby steps in this LFS program and build out your recipes and your menus to make it something that the kids are attracted to and they really like, it does wonders for your entire program. So now your breakfast participation is rising. We
Right.
had a in Bridgeton that had great participation because
Wow.
it's just an overall programmatic shift and change for the
Yeah.
student because they knew a couple items were good, and you're not going to hit on everything. Sometimes something
No.
that's dinner like, oh, I didn't like that, chef. I'm sorry, we'll do better next time. You just go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible to see the chain reaction, the kind of domino effect that improving school food overall will result in higher participation or the kids getting more involved. And I'm gonna skip around for a minute and just ask, given that perspective, how do you and you kind of answered this already, but how do you see that connection between local food sourcing specifically and students' health, engagement, and education?
Well, first of all, again, like you said, we kind of talked about a little bit that
Hmm.
perception, school food is mystery meat, this, that, and the other,
Yeah,
but it's also a lot of processed items. The great thing about LFS is none of that, food that we buy using LFS money can be processed at all. So
right.
now you have an item that you're bringing in that is, 100% healthier, as it comes in your back door. So
Yeah.
that itself, the more times you can, add that to your menu and have your kids participating and eating in your program, that in itself is going to make them healthier versus when
Yeah.
you're serving a processed item. And again, I've been school food service. I was in it for 24 years. There are the opportunities where you're going to have to use a processed item, and I'm
Hmm.
never going to turn the blind eye to it. Never going to say that it can't be served in school food service because there's a place for it. And the key I would say is you have to have balance and you have to
Mm.
use as minimal as you can, to
Yeah.
make your and in using processed items, you want to use ones that are the better or the best for them per se.
Right.
The best of the worst, I guess. But
Right.
the more you can add, scratch cooked items that are purchased with LFS dollars, the better, the more healthier your students are going to be.
Right. And likely the more engaged it seems in what they're actually doing. I mean, we always hear well-fed students are so much more likely to succeed at their studies and actually pay attention in school and be present for their classes and for each other and themselves. I mean, this is fundamental in my perspective, at least. You got to keep kids fed, got to keep them healthy in order for them to thrive.
Mhm.
And it's exciting to hear that you've had, in your experiences, so much success with creating that local food program to support their needs. I am curious, and we did touch on this just a little bit, but if maybe we can expand on it further. If a school doesn't have or isn't equipped for scratch cooking and doesn't necessarily have the resources to support sourcing fresh local ingredients initially, you know, what are some creative ways that they could still take advantage of LFS? And that could also be, equipment related as well.
Mhm. Again, try and be creative and use those LFS dollars, like you said earlier, with hand fruits. Um, what worked wonders for us in Bridgeton is we were utilizing the LFS dollars to do a lot of scratch cooking. We worked with one of our partners, Food Corps, which I'm sure you're very much
Yeah.
familiar. They had a food corps service member who would come in and utilize some fruits and vegetables and do taste tests with the students, out in
Mm.
cafeteria. And that did wonders, for building that again, that overall rapport, with the students and connecting that to the cafeteria. And now, they're out in the cafeteria, they're doing taste tests, they're, eating and tasting things that they have never tasted before and really liking it. Or even if those who didn't like it, there was that engagement that, you
Yeah.
had. So really just try and use what you have to the best of your ability. If you have a small, operation, a small shop with, minimal or few capabilities, don't look at that as a barrier. Utilize
Mm.
it to the best of your ability. And whether it's hand fruits or doing taste tests, there's many different ways that you can be creative in your situation to use that dollar.
Yeah, yeah, and often food hubs, the common market can work directly with the food service director to help them figure out what sort of creative ways they can use given what they have, what their operations look like, or what their staff looks like. And similarly, we've kind of talked about the impact of creating a scratch cook, locally sourced program. We've talked about the impact that that has on the students themselves, but what kind of broader impact have you seen that these kind of programs have on families and the community more broadly?
So it's amazing, what we did in Bridgeton. And to make a long story short, we started our farm to school program back in 2014. I took over as the food service director in 2016. We went from a $4 million budget to an $8 million budget, and
Wow.
we increased our participation, our average daily participation from about 69% to 84% for lunch.
Wow.
Yeah,
Huge. That's
yeah,
fantastic and worth celebrating.
it is, and I'm happy because the community really took to it. One of the most
Mm.
things I'm proud of is that we went, from having four cooks in our school district to 12 cooks in the school
Oh,
district.
wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So that shows you how much cooking that we were doing, and
Yeah.
yeah. And just being able to, add equipment, add the cooks to be able to support, the participation that we were having, in the district. Um, that that's just proof of what LFS, and farm to school can do for you. And again,
Yeah.
we had started farm to school, early, but minimal, not
Right.
nowhere near, what's happening now in Bridgeton. It was very
Yeah.
minimal. When LFS money came through and we really started utilizing it, that's when we hired cooks. We saw the need, we saw, the student participation increase, and just being creative at using that money as it came in. And the thing about it is it's a funny formula. If you increase participation, you're going to increase your revenues. If you
Right.
increase your revenues, you can be more creative about how you build and support your program, which essentially
Right.
puts money into your community, into your students' mouths, and into a win-win situation for everybody who's involved. And it's
Yeah.
just looking at the situation and saying, I'm going to utilize this money to help everybody.
That's fantastic. And I've also seen through some of my own experiences how schools have been able to transform into more community-oriented centers as a result of using this funding. They've put together farmers markets that have supported the broader community of being able to take home more produce and vegetables. They've been able to invite families in to participate in, different sort of exercises with tasting new foods or different recipes. They've been able to keep the community engaged and touch to see the value of supporting their students' health and their overall their school itself. So it's been really exciting to see that shift and that transition take place.
My
Um,
first day with the common market, I was able to go to Arlethea Brown's district, Camden, and I got a chance.
that's what I'm thinking of.
I mean, it was a huge, huge event, and probably one of the biggest farmers markets that I've seen, in New Jersey. I've been to some that, are in other states that like are Amish market or whatever. But I mean,
Yeah,
she had this whole parking lot, lined with tables and tents, full of common market, produce and proteins that she was giving out, to her families. And I'm like, wow, this if this isn't building her overall program, how can you not come here, and get
yeah,
a bag of food and not go to breakfast the next day?
yeah,
And
exactly. Yeah,
that likability, that acceptability of her students, is clear to see. And
yeah.
you have parents. So Johnny can't go home and say, "Oh, mom, the food wasn't good." They're like, Miss Brown ain't gonna put nothing bad on the menu. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, it builds trust.
it does. It builds trust and that familiarity, that the parents know and can trust the school, like you said, is something that, it goes a long way. You're
It
building
does.
community.
Yes. Yes, which is we need that so badly right now. More community, more togetherness through food. I mean, it's foundational. Um, so what, having experienced that through other districts as well, and in your own and in Bridgeton, what have been some of the most effective ways that you've been able to market the inclusion and use of LFS sourced or just local foods in general to the community and the families in a way that will benefit them?
Well, I think it all starts with our farmer profiles that we provide from the common market. Um, I when it was presented to me, I'm like, oh, that's cool. It's like a trading card that you put out on the, serving line,
Kind of
and it's
is. Yeah.
like, that's cool. but I didn't realize the impact that it would have until one day I was standing there, watching the kids go through the line, and they were like, "Hey, I know that farm. My uncle works there." And it was
Oh,
like,
wow.
yeah. So, now you're watching them take, the vegetables, and two or three kids right behind that kid took the veggies too. And I'm like, well, look at that, because
Interesting. Yeah.
you start to see that. And even the one, for Seabrook Farms,
Yeah.
a lot of parents in Bridgeton, they may work at Seabrook Farms, and
Mm.
it's in the packing house, and like, hey, my aunt works there, and there's that familiarity. And again, like we just got done
Yeah.
talking, it's just trust. So
Yeah.
when they're seeing these names, or
Hmm.
seeing marketing on Facebook or Instagram, or
Yeah.
hanging in posters around the cafeteria, when they continue to see that, all that marketing kind of plays in your head and it becomes familiar. One
Absolutely.
one of the things I always said was, as food service directors, as school food service professionals, we're always fighting what these kids see at the malls on TV. And if
Yeah,
they're
it's true.
stronger than ours, then we're never going to win. So we have
Yeah.
to, just as hard with less
Yeah.
of than they have.
Yeah. Yeah.
We really have to meet them where they're at. And
Yeah.
I think the best way to do it at our level is by purchasing local. We're
Right.
purchasing local. McDonald's can't say, well, hey, Coombs Farm is providing us. No, you're not buying nothing from
Mm-mm.
Coombs Farm. Nothing
Not from there, no.
from there.
Nope.
So yeah, so we got a win-win when it comes to marketing, and we have to use, our unique niche in marketing to
Yeah.
build that relationship and bolster our efforts.
Yeah, it's amazing, honestly, how much knowing a face and a name, like how far that goes to be able to build that trust and that excitement too, when you can recognize, oh, I know that farm, or, our school sources from there, or we engage with them. And I think to your point also, it's so much harder for schools to engage with marketing because of phones and social media, and students are constantly wedded and indoctrinated into that. You're right, you have to bust past a couple more barriers there and try to make it as clear as you can what the benefit is. Um, it's
But
there's so many layers.
but back to those farmer profiles, those are so good because now it's word of mouth. They
Exactly.
they go home and say, "Hey, Auntie Katie, I saw your farm, in line at school today." And what? They're talking about it, you know what I mean? And
Yeah, yeah.
now that's that family that you're
Yes.
fostering. And now there's a sense of pride that student has
Yes, pride.
to Katie, because Katie's doing something that's being highlighted in her school district.
Right, right.
they
That
they they go a long way. I thought it was just a trading card that was, that's pretty. But they go a long way. I would tell everybody to make sure that they put their farmer profiles up
yeah.
prominent. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more than just a placeholder, like you said. It's storytelling in a lot of ways. That's amazing. So in that vein, what advice would you give to food service directors who do want to involve students in the process of local food sourcing or even menu planning? You mentioned that there were like Food Corps has, taste tests that they, support the kids in learning about new kinds of foods and new menu items. Are there other ways that you have engaged students in that process, and just overall, how would you draw them in beyond just marketing?
So in Bridgeton, we have what was called a student ambassador program, and we really wanted to make sure that they were a part of the process. So we worked with our principals and our teachers on getting a group of students who they thought would be opinionated and vocal about,
They usually are.
yeah, they usually are. So the first thing we did was we gave them a training, and we taught them how to express themselves to us when it came to the food
Mm,
tasting. So we devised a list of describing words for food. So don't
mm,
say, yuck. Tell me why you don't like it.
right.
The food is acidic. It's too bitter. It's too salty. And we
Okay.
just put these words in there, and we asked them, like, once you tried something, describe it to us in those terms. And it took a little bit of getting used to, but some of those students would come back to us with some of the most foodie, like eloquent answer that you could ever dream. And I sit there, I'm like, man, you're a regular food critic, So
I was gonna say food critics in the making.
yeah. So it really became a process of, building that rapport with the students and learning from them, what it was that they didn't like about the different recipes or the foods that we would, give them. And they would go back and say, hey Katie, next week, we're gonna have this cheeseburger on the menu and it's coming from this farm that, is woman owned. And it was really good. It tastes, it was juicy and whatever. And they had that ownership of being able to make that decision to put that on the menu.
Mhm.
That became a win-win in itself because now you have 12 to 15 ambassadors who are going out and selling your program for you. So
Right, right.
we were given a shirt that said student ambassador. So, we're hoping that they, wore that prominently around the building and said, hey, I helped, put this on the menu. And there was that sense of pride of being able to say that I affected, what it is that we eat, each and every
Yeah,
day. So
that's incredible.
yeah, what I would say to food service directors is really just involve your students,
Yeah.
talk to your students, find out, because I'm 53 years old. I can tell you when I was 13 years old, there was a lot of things that I didn't eat that I will eat now. So I can't taste it and say that I like it
Right, right.
because Johnny, who's 13, he like, no way.
And
So,
it's funny too because I feel like most students want a platform to be able to express their opinions and their thoughts, and they want to feel heard and seen. And I feel like having an ambassador program really gives them that opportunity to feel seen and to feel heard and to impact some sort of change and just overall participation. It's incredibly exciting.
you think about it, Katie, they're on social media where they can give their opinion to each and
I
every
was
single.
just thinking that, but I didn't say it.
So we can't stymie,
Yeah,
in school food service. You're not just going to throw them food and say eat it. Where in social
right.
media, or you can comment on everything.
Exactly. And that's actually a really interesting point too, that they're more used to expressing themselves in that context. So giving them a way in real life, I guess, to be able to express their opinions in a supportive environment also feels like a really productive use of their time as well.
I mean, imagine if they were trained in social media how to respond.
Things might be a little bit better then.
Just a little bit.
Oh man. So one quick question about food waste. I don't know if this is something that you had experienced, but I have heard from some food service directors that they don't want to order seasonal produce or items or local items, excuse me, because they believe it will just end up in the trash. They believe that the students aren't going to want to eat it. And this probably ties into a lot of what we've already talked about, involving students in the menu creation process, involving their feedback to help them better understand what foods they like, what foods they don't like, how to influence the menu. But, you know, how what are some other ways that you were able to introduce new foods to students in a way that's engaging, exciting, and reduces food waste? If that was ever a problem that you experienced.
So again, it's about a mind shift for the food service director, um, your 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 food service staff, your team, and also your teaching staff as well, because there
Mm.
are a lot of people who are really concerned about waste and where our food goes at. And to be honest, I'm sure I'm not telling you anything. Food waste is a huge problem, not just in this country but around the world. I mean,
Yeah,
imagine
absolutely.
people we could feed with some of the good things that are just thrown in the trash.
Yeah.
My philosophy on it always was once you've done your due diligence to put good things on the menu that they want, you have to just resolve with yourself that you're going to have some waste. And
Hmm.
my philosophy was always that, if I put an apple in front of Katie every single day and give her the opportunity to take it, you know, there's going to be a shift one day where Katie says, you know what? I'm just a little bit, more hungry, or I want something, a little sweeter after I just got done eating my baked chicken. So I'm going to take a couple bites of this apple and eat it. And then Katie might become, someone who will eat that apple or those grapes. Or
Hmm.
if, you're creative and you're looking at your seasonality charts and you put something interesting and creative on the menu, they may frown at it and say, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and try that, because it's different, it's new.
Yeah.
The thing I would say is, don't be so upset about waste, but as a food service, director, a buyer, when you're looking at your menu, try to be creative in your rotation so that way they're seeing things new. They're not having what we call menu fatigue and just like, oh, apples and oranges every day, apples and oranges every day,
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
they're going to grab that component and say, I don't want it, or I'm going to throw it away. So, yeah, I'm hoping that you decide that, hey, I need something sweet or I want something citrusy, after I get done eating, I'm going to try it. But if you put something else on the menu for them to try that, they may like and you market it, hey, we're having persimmons today, and it's marketed, on your social media and, around the school or whatever. Well, what's a persimmon? What is that?
Mm.
Then
Yeah.
they might want to try it. So again, we talk about marketing. Marketing is huge, and just
Hmm.
rotating items and keeping it fresh for students. How you
Yeah.
just first display that. There's a lot that we at the Common Market can help when you look at our availability chart to be able to say
Hmm.
you can put this on your menu and it pairs well with this, and you should put it here in your line. Those are
Yeah.
all the having me here with 24 years of experience in school food service kind of help out with.
Yeah. You know a thing or two.
Just, just a couple.
Just a little. I love that you highlighted marketing there again too, because I think a lot of the challenge with food waste is, trying to make it appealing and to help people understand what it is so that they'll at least try it, they'll take it, and then ultimately they might like it. So more points for marketing.
At a market. Yeah.
Um, and then to that event too, do you have any favorite local recipes or menu items or meals from your time as a food service director that you would recommend to school districts? And maybe we can link some of those if you have them.
I tell you what, we did a Peruvian chicken
Ooh.
that the students absolutely loved. Um, it's spicy, but not too spicy. Um,
Mm.
we use local chicken from Smith Poultry Farms, and
Excellent.
it was just baked in the oven, but the spices, and we'll share that recipe with you
Hmm.
guys. But the spices on it and the flavor on it, I have one principal come back and say, "There's no way you made that here in school." I'm like, "Yes, we did." He's
That's amazing.
like, he's like, "There's no." He's like, "That was like restaurant quality." I'm like, "It's here. They made it. They
School
made
food can be that, you know?
it."
Like we
Yeah.
should be surprised that something good comes out of a school food menu, right?
Yep. But
Um,
that was one of the student favorites that we did. Um, the our burgers that we have from Providence Farm from Martha
yeah,
of those as well. I mean, just all natural grass fed beef.
yeah.
80/20. Of
Hmm.
course, we're going to say, oh well, but students are going to eat cheeseburgers. And this one was grass fed. If I
Yeah,
had to say something, it's the best of the worst because you
sure.
know, yeah. And I mean, the way
Absolutely.
we cooked it, we try to cook, the fat out of it the best we could, but it's
Yeah,
good lean beef, a good source of protein, and the students absolutely loved it.
there you go. Sometimes it takes probably working with the classics a little bit and just enhancing the quality, making it a little bit more supportive.
Yeah, I would say if I put a filet mignon next to that burger, there'd be more kids who took the burger than the filet mignon.
Well, right, because it's familiar, right? It's recognizable.
It's who our demographic is. They want a burger.
Yeah, right. You got to work
I
with what
take
you
yeah,
know.
yeah, I take the filet.
So similarly, smaller school districts who we've kind of talked on this, they might receive comparatively smaller LFS awards, might not be able to support, a full semester or a full year of regular orders. So I know you mentioned doing like a big event would be one way to help maximize that, but are there any other suggestions that you would have to enhance that efficiency to just maximize the value of a smaller LFS award?
Um, small awards are tough because, you kind of look at that small amount like we talked about earlier, and, you say, what is it that I can do, with it? Um, no, other than really just, trying to do something, grandiose with it, in the
Yeah.
end. Um, the other thing you could do is, do a standing order, with the common
Hmm.
market, try and stretch it out, as much as you can,
Yeah.
and try and pick an item that's going to cover, seasonality, throughout that time period. But again, like we said earlier, just spend it. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter
Just
what
use
the
it.
yeah, just use that money, because if you don't use it, they're not going to see that you have a need for
Yeah,
it. Yep.
exactly.
Hmm.
Awesome. So I want to shift gears a little bit to talk about just policy in New Jersey in general.
Yep.
So there have been a lot of, or a handful of bills that have been introduced into the New Jersey legislature in support of just enhancing food options and healthier food in public schools in general. And specifically with policies like the Senate Bill S1637 in the New Jersey legislature, which supports farm to school programs. What do you see as the future of local food sourcing in schools nationwide, especially given the successes with LFS?
I'm hoping that this bill passes. There are other states with similar bills, as
Hmm.
we, and just being able to demonstrate the success and the benefits that school districts have by having that extra funding to, buy local foods. And
Hmm.
again, we talked about it earlier. Um, not just the school districts, not just the community, the students, benefit. It's our farmers who benefit, from it.
Yeah,
It's the employees in the school district who benefit from it, just to be able to have that funding. One of the big things, in school is, there isn't a lot of money. So if you look at, our reimbursement, say it's $4.25. Um, can you go to Wawa and get three components, for your lunch and spend $4.25? You can't.
mm-mm,
So
no,
the amount of money that we have to spend, as school food service directors, it's not a lot. And to be able to have those extra monies to spend and be able to run, a profitable business, which was what we're expected to do,
right.
while making it attractive and appealing and healthy, and
It's
kids.
hard.
There's a lot of challenges. So, having this bill, to be passed, and I'm we were blessed in Bridgeton to be a part of the pilot program that,
Hmm.
provided some of the data to, get that bill, where it's at right now in the Senate. We did it was so amazing. I laugh about it all the time because it was just it when we started, it just snowballed. We did salad bars in Bridgeton.
Mm-hmm.
Market gave us a grant for $25,000, and we
Wow.
decided salad bars. So we put the salad bars in the cafeteria, outside of the line in the cafeterias, and we built a program to where we went in and we taught the students etiquette, how to eat from the salad bar. Um,
Wow, amazing.
and again, you go back to marketing. Um, if my class was, trained and ready to go, we went slow, class by
Hmm.
class. Katie's class wasn't trained yet. So when my class went in line and we got the salad bar, Katie's sitting there saying, well, wait a minute. Warren's got salad,
Yeah,
I want salad too. So now you're building that desire. Like, what is Warren getting that I'm not getting? So
right.
now when I go to your class and, you're being trained, you're ready. You're taking that information in because now I'm going to get something that I want. So
Yeah.
long story short, the salad bars were able to continue in Bridgeton years after that grant went away because LFS dollars, you put
Mm,
local
yeah.
lettuce, provided by the common market on there. And now again, you're building that program and the acceptability, by the students to be able to
Yeah,
say, I want to eat, here. And that demonstration, the data that we were able to provide, for the bill was tremendous because it being able to tell the story, I had a chance to testify, on that bill last month, and it passed through, so it's in the next stage, with the Senate. And I'm praying and hoping that the bill
yeah,
does pass because to see the impact that it had, not only in Bridgeton, but in Camden as well, if we can have that across the state, and hopefully
yeah.
one day, nation, so many farmers and school districts and students are going to benefit from it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's been so much interest in the durability and the sustainability of programs like LFS. And, everyone keeps asking the question, what's going to happen when the funds dry up or when the funds run out or when they don't renew the program? And, bills like this can help to ensure the sustainability of these programs. And especially when food service directors are working as hard as you have in the past to create a local food sourcing program and to enhance these elements within your operations. You don't want to see it all of a sudden just disappear because the funding is no longer available to support it. So it's a huge trickle down effect to all of this. And I'm keeping all my fingers and toes crossed too that it goes through.
And I think one of the things that we can do, as people who are in these programs, is use the funds. In
Yeah.
government, what happens with funding is they also look at the budget and say, well, how much is left on the table? If
Mhm.
we have money that's left on the table, we're going to say, well, they didn't use it, they didn't need it. But if we're using the funds and we're demonstrating that there's a need for it, then someone, who's a champion for those bills, for those resources is going to say, listen, there's a need for it because, a great percentage of that money was utilized. So we
Yeah.
need to, we're going to, ever be able to, try to get it again.
Yeah,
Regardless.
that's a really good point. Yeah. We have to make sure that the folks who see this or listen to it know that they have funding that they can use that will then help to support the durability, the sustainability of programs like this in the future. Please use your funding. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Warren. Those were all the questions that we had today, but I really, really appreciate your time and just your experience and the ability that you have had to create all of the things that you've created. It's truly fantastic to hear about that and all of your successes.
Tell you what, it was not just me, it was a team of people who, sat down and brainstormed and took the ideas that we came up with and brought it to fruition. So
Yeah,
it was, and I'm
it
I'm
takes a
so
village.
yeah, it does. It takes a village, and I'm so glad I mean, Kate, you asked some great follow-up questions, some things that weren't anywhere near on this doc. But that's what I wanted. I knew you would be involved in the conversation and have a lot of
Of
content
course.
from your background and your knowledge. So I think it's a
Yeah.
great conversation. I hope we can have more of these. This is great.
Yeah, this was fun. I really appreciate it.